Sometimes wonder if we have free will and what compels you to make the choices that you make. What compels everyone to make the choices that they make in the grand scheme of things? Why is society structured the way it is rather than being it being something else? Why do we have the thought patterns that we have rather than others? And are there even original thoughts? I don't think there can be. If everything in creation exists simultaneously, then every conceivable outcome exists by default. Everything that you could possibly think of, from the most horrifying nightmare to the most blissful paradise, exists in a dimension or reality somewhere within the eternity of creation. So when you have a thought come into your mind, you're actually receiving information like a radio transmission from another realm. But now, this is where things get a little bit depressing. I wrote a lot of songs, and they're my songs, and my poems, and my lyrics, and my music. I must have obtained that information from elsewhere as well, that inspiration. Are your thoughts your own thoughts, or are they God's thoughts? Is your life your own, or is it God's life? If we are drops in an endless ocean, then we are inherently part of that ocean and we cannot be separated from it. That ocean influences and conducts the way we think and the way we live. It's like an orchestra, and the conductor is conducting the musicians to play certain tunes. It's like we're in a play. Have you ever wondered this to yourself? Why you think the thoughts you think? Why you have the desires that you have? Is it simply genetic? Is it nature versus nurture? This is all you know? Or is there something more propelling you? And the same is most likely true for after we pass on. If we choose to reincarnate, whether it be in the darker realms of duality that we're in right now, or whether it would be into a paradise or into a hellish realm, wherever it is that we go. What compels us to go there? What, when you make a choice, ask yourself, is it your own? Sometimes I think it's healthy to question free will. Sometimes I think it's healthy to question everything you think about and try to understand that maybe you are being influenced by forces greater than yourself. I try to go very deep into my imagination, which is why I have very elaborate dreams and lucid dreams, because I try to imagine realities that are difficult to comprehend, that are outside what we would think of as the norm. And I have seen such realities where distortions in time, in interactions between beings, has no comparison between what we're experiencing here and there. There are two main components to creation, or so we think, that being a fear and love. Love, pleasure, kindness, or hate, fear, greed, those two opposite components. That seems to be the two basic fundamental elements of creation. But there are infinite variations of the two. And I would actually argue in the greater dimensions, there are more than two variations of expressions of God. There are probably variations that are so inconceivable to our feeble minds that we just simply cannot comprehend them in our current place in evolution. How I do think God creates, though, is that in our structure of reality, everything functions in essentially the same manner. Everything is a seed, and the seed is like a womb, and it is birthed. Either it is birthed or it is blossomed. After the seed blossoms, it starts to grow, and the same elements are in the universe. We have two basic components in our type of universe that we live in. We have duality, light and dark, yin and yang. They are compressed into a singularity, which is the womb, which is the single cell that begins to multiply, which is the seed, all principles being the same. And then that expands and grows and becomes something much bigger than the seed. Then it begins to decay. It begins to die. It begins to wither away, and then it collapses back in on itself and returns to the singularity, into the basic elements of what it came from. And all that information is stored inside that little seed again, in order to be taken back for God, the Creator, to breathe that information in, because God breathes in and out. He breathes in experience, He breathes out creation. And when He breathes out, a new seed is planted in the dark void being infinite without end, just as the omniverse is infinite without end. And all of these multiverses, all of these reality systems and dimensions have their cycles too. Birth, death cycles. And of course, there might be other variations of cycles that are beyond what we can conceive. We can only conceptualize a birth and death cycle, but there are other cycles, perhaps other mirrored or inverted cycles that exist in other universes. Perhaps there are antimatter universes. Perhaps there are universes that don't have any matter at all, that aren't even made of light. Probably the hellish realms. I want to ask you though, do you have free will? I often wonder why I've lived the way I've lived and why I've thought the way I thought, why I made the choices I made instead of making other ones. And I'm not taking away responsibility, personal responsibility, because you do have free will, but it's condensed into this sphere, this little matrix that you're living in. In the greater realm of creation, perhaps you don't. Perhaps you have a branch of choices, but yet even the Creator knows which one you'll make. It's like a natural flow, like a river. So Is there even a point of fighting against the river? Is there a point to try to swim away? You're trying to swim in the current instead of flowing with the current, and just allow that breath of God to breathe life through you so that you can flow. And why am I talking about this? Is because I've spent my entire life fighting against the current, fighting against my thoughts, fighting against creation. If I could just breathe and realize that God is a breath, maybe I can finally free myself in that love of creation. I'm sure many of you have gone through the same thing, where you're fighting against yourself. As I am too, every day it's a struggle to accept myself, to love myself. Isn't it better to just realize that no matter what, you are always loved, and you are always worthy, and you are always cherished, because you are the river of life that is eternal. And God loves you, as hard as it seems like sometimes, but God loves you.